Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Raymore City Council special meeting for Monday, August the 30th. It was fortuitous that we already spoke about meeting tonight for a work session. The item that we're going to be addressing tonight did come up last minute, and that's why it's an emergency reading, but we'll call the meeting to order at this time, and I'd ask for a roll call.
Councilmember Abdelgawan.
Here.
Councilmember Barber.
Present.
Councilmember Berenson. Absent. Councilmember Burke.
Present.
Councilmember Circo.
Present.
Councilmember Holman.
Present.
Councilmember Townsend.
Present.
Councilmember Will Scherzer.
Present.
And Mayor Turnbow.
Present. We have a quorum. Although it's not on the agenda, would you please rise and join me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
And while normally we would do it prior to the pledge while we're standing, I would ask for a moment of silence for the Marine lives lost in Afghanistan this past week. Thank you. Keep their family and their other colleagues in your prayers and thoughts, please. We'll now move on to new business. We only have the one item tonight. It is the Ward Road Cost Share Agreement. Could I please have the first reading of Bill 3648 by title only?
First reading of Bill 3648 by title only. An ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to enter into a cooperative cost-sharing agreement with Cass County, Missouri for the completion of certain transportation improvements to Ward Road and authorizing the mayor to declare this as an emergency.
Could I have a staff report, please?
Thank you, Your Honor. This bill will authorize the mayor to enter into an intergovernmental cost share agreement with Cass County to effect the emergency repairs that we've been talking about with the City Council for a couple of months now. The agreement calls for each entity to contribute $75,000 to the project. Should there be cost overruns, as you can note from the agreement, there is the ability to extend that same cost share out or cancel the agreement, which we would never do or recommend to the council, since this is significantly lower than we had originally estimated. The county will be doing a final read. They did a kind of a preliminary read last week, had some questions that have now been answered, so they're going to be doing a final read on Thursday. If the council authorizes this work on emergency read tonight, the work is actually now slated to begin on Friday in small notice and then really kick into gear next week, and they hope to have it completed by the week following. That concludes staff report, sir.
Thank you. Any questions of staff? If there are no questions, I'd entertain. Oh,
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Townsend, yes.
I didn't see any budget amendment or anything. Which funding source was this? Was this out of the...
We actually did the budget amendment when we did the Kurzweil and this road.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anything else? If there's no further questions, I'd entertain a motion to dispose of the first reading of Bill 3648.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Townsend.
I move that we approve the first reading of Bill 3648, Ward Road Cost Share Agreement.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Yes, sir. I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. Motion been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3648. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Passes unanimously, 7-0. Could I please have the second reading, as this is an emergency reading of this particular ordinance, could I please have the second reading of Bill 3648 by title only?
The second reading of Bill 30...
In its entirety, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir. Second reading of Bill 3648 in its entirety. An ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to enter into a cooperative cost-sharing agreement with Cass County, Missouri for the completion of certain transportation improvements to Ward Road and authorizing the mayor to declare this as an emergency. Whereas Article 6, Section 16 of the Constitution of Missouri and Section 70.220 of the Revised Statutes of Missouri provide that any municipality or political subdivision of the state may cooperate under contract to provide a common service as provided by law. And And whereas Raymore and Cass County, Missouri, the parties, desire to facilitate certain emergency traffic and transportation repairs along Ward Road, and whereas the parties have agreed to cooperatively assist with the costs of the repairs, and whereas the Ward Road repairs would not be realized or completed absent a cooperative agreement and cost sharing between the parties. Now therefore be it ordained by the Council of the City of Raymore, Missouri as follows. Section 1. The mayor is hereby directed to enter into a cooperative cost sharing agreement with Cass County, Missouri for the Ward Road Emergency Repairs Project. Section 2. The mayor, city manager, and city clerk are hereby authorized to execute the contract attached as Exhibit A. Section 3. The city manager is authorized and to approve change orders for the project within established budget constraints. Section 4. Effective date. The effective date of approval of this ordinance shall be coincidental with the mayor's signature and attestation by the city clerk. Section 5. Severability. If any section, subsection, sentence, clause, phrase, or portion of this ordinance is for any reason held invalid or unconstitutional by any court of competent jurisdiction, such portion shall be deemed a separate, distinct, and independent provision of such holding shall not affect the validity of the remaining portions thereof. Section 6, emergency reading. In order to assure a timely completion of this project, the mayor hereby authorizes the passage of this ordinance as an emergency bill.
Thank you.
Duly read the first and second time this 30th day of August 2021 by the following vote.
Thank you. If there's no further comment, I'd entertain a motion to dispose of the second reading of this ordinance.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Townsend.
I move that we approve the second reading of Bill 3648, Ward Road Cost Share Agreement.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll again second the motion, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. Motion been made and seconded to approve the second reading of Bill 3648. Does this require a roll call?
No, sir. No, sir.
Okay. Just checking to make sure. All right. All those in favor of the item, of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 7-0. Motion carries. Now move on to the public comment section of this short agenda. If anyone would like to address the council at this time, please step forward, state your name and address for the record, and try to keep your comments to 5 minutes or less.
Good evening. Pam Hatcher, 1403 North Madison, Raymore, Missouri. I had the opportunity to meet with Mr. Gress and Mr. Fearborn this morning, and I appreciate their time in speaking with me regarding the Chapter 100 vote that was taken last Monday regarding the Watermark multifamily unit that is being discussed over on Dean. While I still do not agree with it, I was asked if I understood the difference or understood what a Chapter 100 was. I do. I think I appropriately provided an overview of Chapter 100 versus a TIF versus a SID, so I am very familiar with those. I simply don't support providing tax incentives for residential developers, especially large corporations. That's a personal opinion. And as someone being in commercial real estate for 35 years, I see no need for a city to provide that to a developer. I also have a personal interest in helping many of our senior citizens who have been the backbone of our tax base for the past 30 and 40 years, because right now there's no place for them to move to. And if we're going to provide this type of thing for residential, while I appreciate luxury multifamily, that isn't what they need. They can't afford to go to Foxwood. Where are they supposed to go? So while I appreciate that the council has set a goal for the city staff to provide this luxury apartment, what about your tax base who has been the backbone of the city for 30 and 40 years? They need out of these houses. They need out of these homes that have steps. They need ADA compliant homes, and we don't have them. I don't know where they're gonna go. I have Morningside's full. I don't have anything. So if there's an initiative in which you wanna provide some tax incentives, let's find a developer who's gonna build that for us. That's, once again, personal opinion. The other thing is I think we've grown large enough that I think Mr. Gress is doing a great job, but as he reminded me today, he's one person. Maybe the city needs to start looking at an economic development council, helping him out. getting some additional business people in and meeting once a month and looking at additional resources for him. He is one person. Okay? Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you. Anyone else? That's fine.
I'm Jim Haddock, 909 Wesley Circle, Raymore, Missouri. I'm here to speak in opposition to Bill 3647, Watermark at Raymore Chapter 100 request as well. I realize that the meeting is going to be on the 13th, and I think most of you, I hope, saw that I intend to speak at that meeting as well. Don't intend to ring your bell tonight on the timer, but I might on the 13th, so practice. First, I wanted to say thanks to the RAPEC Board Superintendent, Dr. Slagle, and Board Member Kim York for appearing last Monday. I think we all know they have a lot of other stuff going on right now, and it was not overlooked by me that that was the first day of school, that everybody had been in school, 6,400 students in almost 18 months. And they felt important enough for the two of them to come appear in front of the council, and I appreciate that. I came here once before, I recalled on the way here, and it was just for the sole purpose of thanking the commissioner, or the council, I'm sorry. You refunded a lot of our water deposits a 2 or 3 years ago, and I appreciate that. Tonight, of course, I'm not here to thank you, except for John, who's not here. I did mention I'm on the agenda for the 13th. I tried to copy everyone. You all have my contact info. I know I can't meet with you other than in this venue as a group, but I certainly, I feel free to anybody here to call me, speak to me. I'll meet with you as well. I have a few bullets that I do intend to read, but still not hit 5 minutes. Gilmore and Bell put together a presentation. There's a project presentation in that in the e-packet from last weekend, and I just thought it was worth reading the description of a Chapter 100 financing. The act authorizes cities, counties, towns, and villages to issue revenue bonds to finance the purchase, construction, extension, and improvement of warehouses, distribution facilities, research and development facilities, office industries, agricultural processing industries, service facilities that provide interstate commerce, industrial plants, and other commercial facilities. Residential, of course, is not mentioned. I am not saying that you are doing something wrong. It's clear this is not the first luxury development, but I will point out that I do not think that luxury residential development was the original intent of Chapter 100. Another thing that hasn't been spoken of is the assessment level by the Cass County assessor. From their website, once the estimate of a market value has been determined, the assessor calculates a percentage of that value to arrive at an assessed value. The percentage is based on the classification determined by the type of property or how it is used. The percentages are ag is 12%, commerce and all other is 32%, real estate residential, which it does include apartment complexes, is 19%. So by rezoning this property, you actually, if it was zoned back to commercial, which I realize you did that at the beginning of the meeting, and I don't personally have a big deal with this, but if it was a similar commercial investment, the real estate property taxes due would be 68% greater, just between that 19 and 32%. So that's not insignificant in of itself. I heard retail follows rooftops at the meeting. Perhaps this is true. I'm not an expert in economic development, but it can't work this way in this situation. Before being rezoned multifamily residential earlier in the meeting on 8/23, this project site was the last zone commercial in that vicinity. I'm sorry, that's not developed. Obviously, it is adjacent to developed commercial property, but there's no other commercial property for the retail to build on to follow this residential development. Ironically, the developer was quite honest in his response. We will tend to follow retail. So not even he agreed with that. That's not what he's doing here. I also heard not all residents of this property complex will come from outside of Raymore. Perhaps that's true too. But if they come from within Raymore or even Raymore RAPEC School District, some will more than likely move into the housing unit they've moved from. So I think it's actually the council's intent to add more housing units to RAPEC School District, Raymore, and there will be an increase in population. So I guess I reject that. I noticed on the cover page, it says that the strategic plan, goal, and strategy that this project is intended to meet is 3.2.4, provide quality, diverse housing options that meet the needs of our community. I won't argue that, but there's three others that I will argue it doesn't meet. 3.1.1, expand the commercial tax base. 3.1.2, focus development strategies on opportunities that align with the community priorities. 4.3.1, develop and implement long-term funding strategies to support city operations and needs. I am aware of a total of 3 Chapter 100 deals proposed for residential developments in Raymore. The lofts at Fox Ridge, the venue at the Good Ranch, and this one, the Watermark at Raymore. I missed the lofts at Fox Ridge. I'd have been here then. I just wasn't paying attention.
Mr. Haddock, you reached your 5 minutes.
I said I wasn't going to ring your bell.
I know, right?
I guess I practiced. All right, thanks.
Okay, we'll hear from you again on the 13th. All right, we'll see you then. I don't believe we have any room on this agenda for additional comments by the council, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn from the special meeting.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Townsend,
move that we adjourn from the special meeting for August the 30th.
thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. Motion been made and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor? We are adjourned from the special meeting. We'll now move into the City Council work session for Monday, August the 30th, 2021. Item on our agenda tonight, as was discussed at the last council meeting, was to discuss the 2022 budget and the proposed 2022-2026 CIP. I know that, did you have a couple of items? Okay, I'll turn it over to Mr. Fearborn then. Go ahead.
I thank you, sir. Since we last met on this particular item, we have received some very good news that I discussed with the council. Mr. Icky has managed to twist some arms, and our insurance increase overall will be 3.5%. The budget that had a $21,000 surplus, you will remember on the general fund summary sheet, will now be enough of a surplus over expenses that I will be proposing to the council and hope you will accept, that we increase across the board on the salary chart, that we improve the chart by 1% and then move people through to the improved chart amount, which will amount to a 3.6% increase in our employee salaries for the year. Very, very good news. Would also point out that because of our experience, the deal that we have within our contract with our health insurance provider is that they will, if we do not hit their target number as far as expenses versus premium, we get reimbursed that amount within this particular contract. Last year applied to the fund balance that you are seeing with that $2.5 million projected fund balance. $120,000 of that $2.5 million is what we saved by our employees being healthy. To some degree, COVID also contributed to that because nobody was going into the hospital or the doctor's office, but part of that was employee effort. We had a whole lot of different things that I could have proposed to the council relative to that $120,000, move it into the restricted revenue fund for something. Instead, it's a one-time thing. We talk about those one-time things. So we simply pushed it into the gross fund balance of $2.5 million, but I would just want to point out to the city council that of that $2.5 million that we may get to speaking about tonight, $120,000 of that is directly related to not having to pay or getting a reimbursement on premium that our employees by virtue of staying healthy, it was like any other expense that we did not have. So very good news on both fronts. Third front that I would point out to the council is this very day at 3 o'clock this afternoon, we received notification from the Government Finance Officers Association that we have once again, for the 15th year in a row, won the Distinguished Budget Award.
Excellent.
That concludes the opening staff report on this item, sir.
All right, thank you. And as I was going to say, we did have a list of projects that Mr. Feuerborn provided us that were not part of the initial budgeting process, and there wasn't a lot of angst I heard in his voice about those items. So I did ask him today, and a couple of the items that might fall under Parks and Rec issues that we might want to consider, although there is the potential that through the general obligation bond projects, there is a potential that we may do better on those. And so one of the things that he and I talked about today and suggested potentially is holding a large stock of that aside to mid-year to find out what the status is for this year's budget, and maybe come up in April or May of 2022 and discuss some of these items for potential funding if that does not come to fruition. I know we talked about the what were some of the things we talked about? The pickleball courts. We talked about the amphitheater access road. There were a couple of other things. Okay. Oh, the Hawk Ridge Park entrance. Okay. That could potentially be discussed tonight for consideration of inclusion in the 2022 budget. I also mentioned to him that I do recall when I was police chief that there was a groundswell of support from the council on a couple of occasions to accelerate the curb replacement program to a certain extent and offer additional funding to the Public Works Department for their consideration. Because this year what will happen is that with the funds that have been provided under the curb replacement program, there potentially could be restricted to a certain number of projects that are prioritized after the budget is passed. We really don't have a list of those curbing projects that are going on now, but it may give us an opportunity to expand that program for a year and get a little more curb replacement done. I've noticed in a couple of our communities driving about, those that are 20 plus, 25 years plus in nature have some curbing issues that are going on. And we might be able to accelerate because as Mr. Krass likes to say, it's a curb replacing is going to go on far beyond our lifespan potentially. And but I was just thinking, for especially the way that curbs are doing now, they're beautiful. They give a smoother entrance into the driveways of the residents. It really is working out very well in the areas I've seen the block curb being replaced as opposed to the roll-up curb. So that I was going to plant that seed in your minds about potential consideration for that too. But I wanted to open it up for conversation because we want to talk about this as much as we can before we move into the actual approval of the budget. Mr. Barber. Oh, Mr. Freeman.
So what I handed out to you all just now is the entrance plaza, which is something you can get very much excited about. It truly is a gathering area for the city. The mayor had asked me, are there any of these projects on here that staff feels particularly passionate about? This is one of them. It is a gathering area. It's not just an entrance plaza, it is a gathering area for Parks and Rec. But what I would like to point out is all three of these items are, to what the mayor was just now talking about, all three of these Hawk Ridge Park items that you see on here are actually alternates in our GEO bond issue bid that is going out for the global aspect. So to what the mayor is saying on the wait and see aspect of these funds, let's wait and see if the GO bond issue is going to be able to pay for these within the bids that are received. And if that happens, we don't need to even be having the discussion now about it. Better not to put items like that on now, to have to pull them back with a budget amendment and then put a new budget amendment in for something else that we're going to add. If we need it then, let's use it then. Probably a fourth piece of good news is when we did the GO bond sale for the first $9 million, we had a little over $800,000 in premium on that bond sale, which means that's money that's not allocated to anything on that. With this bond sale, Mr. Goffey indicates to me that we are so attractive with that, he's thinking $1 million to $1.1 million in premium on that bond sale, which means without turning the tap, we're going to have about $2 million over and above the amounts that we think are going to be necessary to even do the projects. The council will have plenty of time to make decisions on how to allocate that money, what to do with that money within the bond sale. And if we need it for this, we could apply, you all could make the determination to apply it to this. But for right now, I think it would be premature, and we could put off, do we really want to make a commitment on these funds for certain of these projects until we're in the year? You've always heard me describe the budget's a living document. We live it every single month. You all live it every single month. We can always do amendments for anything that you would want to add later, up to and including. There's no question. We've got what feels like about 1 million years of curb replacement to do. You know, if next year we're into the year and a whole bunch of these projects can be paid for with something else, if we want to allocate it to that kind of a maintenance project, let's look at those with these funds rather than funds that we're kind of, I don't want to say we're getting them for free because it costs taxpayers money, but with our promise to the taxpayers of 7170, we're getting $2 million over and above what we, you know, what's allocated and budgeted for these projects. I do have one, sir, that is so tiny I almost hate to bring it up, but we had a homicide happen about the time that we were doing the budget.
Sure.
And it pointed to a need down in the police department of $9,000. I'm going to be bringing to you guys a zero budget as far as applying all of our excess funds to the salary and improving the chart. This is roughly a $9,000 item that I didn't even know existed, but apparently it is of paramount importance in certain instances that you be able to dry blood and other things immediately after a crime when you're collecting evidence. This seems to be...
Instead of having to buy a freezer, put it all in.
This seems
What
to
we did
be
with the
an
Robinson case.
excellent use of the council funds if you want to add something into there that, like, a whole bunch of people jumped all over this downstairs right after the budget meeting. So again, it's cheap. I unfortunately can't fit it into a zero budget. So might be a nice little, hey, this is a nothing compared to $1.5 million and whatever, and add it to the list.
Mr. Holden?
So the mayor knows, basically anytime you've got evidence that is wet, any type of bodily fluids, all kinds of chemical reactions can occur there. You can get mold on it, and it ruins your sample. So you put the stuff in here, it dries it out, preserves it, send it to the lab. And you know, there are other ways of doing it, but they are labor intensive, and you got to keep track of it, and you don't want some of these items laying around. Yeah, potential for cross contamination.
I
So
actually
this is
brought
a
up
good
the
idea.
freezing scenario, sir.
Yeah.
And I got a really terse, it melts.
Eventually. That's Tom.
Yeah, I had a question. So this, they would secure the evidence at the crime scene, and they would bring it back to put it in, this would be located here, and they would bring it back and lock it up in here to
Yes, sir.
preserve it? Okay. I was trying to figure out how they transport.
Temporarily.
Yeah, temporarily.
Till it's dry, and then they bag it up, and put it in a property room or ship it off to the lab.
Did they have any need for this prior to the recent homicide?
Very much so. A variety of uses with this. They just forgot to put it on the
Pass we've just made.
the
too.
list,
Mr.
if you
Barber,
will.
Did you have anything?
Yeah, I let Mr. Fairborn go, and then
All right.
I got pushed down. I had a question about the 120,000 that the employees, the basic rebate you got back from the insurance company. Obviously, we are looking at, we want to limit our reoccurring expenses, but is there anything that we can do with that to provide a benefit to the employees for that? Is there something, have you thought about anything that some of that, or I don't know, all of it or part of it could go back to staff?
Items. I'm sorry. I meant to hand this out. Does the council have this?
I still have mine. You need one? Who needs one? You need one?
I apologize. That was going to be the first thing I passed out here. Only this item, sir. The first three items are HR items. My concern with one of them, which is we're struggling with, and we know we have to address, is this new federal holiday. However, the first two items are single item cost. As far as Christmas and New Year's this upcoming year, which was, as I told you, it is probably, you'll remember a couple of years ago, the council, by virtue of the calendar, did that for our employees. Probably the number one, please pass on to as I did in January, the number one, please pass on to the council how much we appreciated this item. That is a huge issue. Historically, and I don't think you were here, sir, many years ago, New Year's Eve was actually a set holiday for us. That got canceled against the recommendation of the Employee Relations Committee and moved to President's Day to spread out the holidays. They so appreciated the year that you all gave that to them. And again, the employee in service, we do this huge employee in service every single year on Columbus Day, and kind of shut down operations and do significant professional development on that day. Our employees have expressed how valuable that is to them. So those two, again, we're still struggling with the new federal holiday and how we're going to address that. We've had a whole bunch, I mean, 3 days in advance, it was announced by the federal government that it was going to be a holiday, and that you should have seen the city manager's listserv for Missouri. I mean, it was just blowing up with who's doing what, and pretty much with very few exceptions, everybody was like, we're putting this off until next year. We would hope at a future date to have some sort of a recommendation to you all. But those first two items, or those non-recurring cost items, certainly against the 120,000, is a minor amount compared to that the council may want to consider. With the exception of the New Year's holiday, again, as the mayor has indicated, all of those could wait because it's a living budget and we could do a budget amendment at a later date. But again, minor amounts compared to your city manager's comfort level of $1.5 million in expenditures.
Mr. Holman?
Given the information that you provided us, 120,000 coming back in from essentially employees, less use of what we thought they might spend based on the insurance company, the figures of the top two, and we have set precedent on these in the past. We established the Employee and Service Day, which is also a day they come in and can enroll for their benefits or learn about their benefits as well. Jim, is that right?
It is really turned into a multifaceted day. I mean, they get to learn about their benefits. There's presentations by folks. We've had blood pressure checks. We've had, health checks. It's a valuable day for them.
And then you've asked us in the past when the holidays fall on odd days if we were so inclined, especially when staff had kicked it into double gear and done. There was one year in particular they'd done a number of extraordinary things up above and beyond. To me, the top two should be immediately put into the budget.
Over here, not talking into the microphone. Mr. Holman talked to the point about the itemization of what goes into the top two. So as far as the third one, is that salaries, what is the cost breakdown there? What is it?
That cost, you would normally be paying our individuals to be here that day. So we don't count that cost. This is the overtime for those individuals who don't get to,
Okay.
who have to be here.
Gotcha, because I was going to...
Our 24/7 boots on the ground, splendid police force and dispatchers.
Gotcha, because I was thinking of the total staff number. I'm like, that seems a rather low number, not thinking of who has to be here.
The problem is if we implement that, it goes into a policy of the council that we're going to celebrate that holiday, and that becomes a recurring cost. And I recognize $5,000 against $1.5 million goes a long way, but it's still a recurring cost item, and so I have difficulty with that as far as my struggle is concerned within the confines of a one-time cost discussion with the council.
And
That
I'm not
time will
opposed
come.
to the third one. Again, I thought we probably needed information back on, since it's going to be a policy change and a recurring cost, even though it's pretty small.
No, and I completely agree. No, I just needed to get educated on, because it's $5,000. I'm thinking it's what I'm used to as far as different holidays. There's programs that speak to the holiday and advertising and things like that, training and such. So that's what my assumption was. It was there, not thinking of the staff that's on duty that day, and it's their salary costs that are associated with that. So in this year's conversation, it's just a timing issue. And out years, is this now a budgeted item? That is now.
I would think so, yeah. Because then it becomes a
Because
policy
it's a
issue.
policy issue. Okay.
Policy change. yeah.
Okay. Just clarification. Thank you.
No, and it needs to be included. Yes, Mr. Barber.
Yeah, just for my curiosity, do we recognize all federal holidays? Is there any that we don't recognize as a city?
It seems like there's so many of them. Columbus Day is probably the biggest one, but again, that's our staff development day. We close down for that particular one. Are there any that we do not recognize? I see Mr. Icky is quickly typing, as only he can do. So I'm going to pause for just a minute. Oh,
Is it a federal holiday? I thought it was just a state holiday. Yeah.
yeah, there are a ton of state holidays that we don't recognize, but federal holidays, for the most part, we do recognize in one form or another. We don't necessarily take off.
Sidebar with Mr. Zer, how Missouri celebrates
The two that I would point out,
Massachusetts Patriots Day.
and one's a little bit more, well, Patriots Day is Massachusetts because of 1776.
The Brady
Patriot Day is September 11th, which we do not take off for. interestingly enough, but is a federal holiday, and I actually have to talk to you all under other about that particular day tonight. But we don't do anything for Patriot Day, and we don't do anything for Inauguration Day, and both of those are federal holidays.
So my understanding is our policy is not, we look at each one of them individually. It's not an overall policy that we recognize.
That is correct. Because it is a federal holiday, we are not compelled by the federal government to do anything.
All right, well, there'll be other opportunities for us to discuss the project list or anything else that you all feel is a priority. Yes, Mr. Burke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is this the time that if we have individual smaller projects that we wanted to propose, or do we want to wait until we have it up on a board and give you some time to research my idea and the price?
What I have suggested to Ms. Williams, because we do not have it on the board tonight, is from the initial list, it seems to me that the two items from HR and this item should be added to the list and subtracted from the general fund balance. And then at our next work session that we're discussing this, if in front of that work session, you could email me, and courtesy copy the entire council so they know that's out there running with requests for pricing that might be associated with XYZ, if the council is okay with that. I think that way we all kind of know where we're running.
What'd you have in mind?
The idea was three different solar-powered LED lights. One to be on Lucy Webb, where the crosswalk is from the Arboretum to the other side of Lucy Webb. There's a lot of plants, and there's an island where pedestrians can be.
The area of pedestrian safety there.
But it is, I don't know, I think for there, like a triangle or a flashing pedestrian crossing sign, just with those LEDs around the perimeter of it, like we've done on the stop signs on Lucy Webb and School Road.
Something similar to what we have in the CIP budget down on for
the
Good Parkway, where the trail offsets there.
And
Something similar to that.
yes, exactly like that. And then also when Mr. Serco and I and you all, we met about the intersection of Silver Lake, is it Silver Lake Drive? Silver Lake, Johnson Parkway, and Johnson Drive, where those three roads come together. Weekly, I see almost wrecks. The sign for the yield, you cannot see it all because of a tree that grows in front of it. I felt like a flashing yield sign would be helpful. And then also the stop sign that's kind of covered by trees from someone's yard. You can't really see the stop sign that is at the, if you're going northbound on entering onto Johnson Parkway from Silver Lake Circle, I think it is. You really can't see that, and there's so many times people will stop and they're waving each other, and I'm like, I just point at the stop sign that I'm sitting at, and they eventually look around and go. But it is very confusing to anyone that does not live in the area.
And so the rest of the council is aware. We met with the Ward 2 members with a number of easily I won't say the worst intersection, the goofiest intersection in this city, down there in Silver Lake. So we came up with a number of alternatives to them, which we could certainly present to the council, and estimated costs associated with them. I think the Ward 2 members would say the simpler the better, so we're not having to do a taking on someone's yard as far as what are the costs associated with additional signage, some striping? There's the possibility of rolling off a little piece of that 1 yard on the furthest south end of it, but again, I have a feeling, because we're going to be cutting out some very old trees to do that, and would probably meet with a great deal of resistance. Exactly. So I think the cost for the signage is what we would be recommending, and I think the Ward 2 members would be requesting of the council. Very minimal cost, but we can add that to this list, sir.
Said 3.
Well, there are 3 signs.
Oh, I got you.
Stop sign, and then
Gotcha. I gotcha. All right, good to know.
pedestrian sign. The pedestrian sign, I had a couple people that walk in the morning on Lucy Webb. One person's Joellen Haney, and she just thinks that since we've lifted, I don't know how many years ago it was, quite a few years ago, the speed limit to 35, that she feels more vulnerable when she's crossing that crosswalk, especially in the morning when it's dark. And so that was coming from people in the ward as well.
I think it's always been 35, as long as I've been here, so it must be prior to me.
Wow, because I remember people going to school did not like being behind me when I traveled 25.
It's because it was 35. Sure, Joe. Hey, look that one up. I want to get him on this one.
Fine, so use staff as your dagger.
Okay. Anybody else have anything I'd like to bring up? Apparently, yeah, go ahead.
Just one quick question. I know in one of our ward meetings, John and I had discussed getting like more Raymore swag for staff. I'm wondering if that might be, I don't know where you are as far as that, or if that'd be a good suggestion for that money we got back from the insurance.
We actually have that in budget, but supplementing it with that is not a bad idea as you put that in. And I like your terminology, for sure. Swag for staff and council, as far as the obvious pride that we have in this city. Let me look into doing some supplemental to the plan that we have, because you'll remember on Columbus Day, our intention is for staff. Our difficulty, we're actually going to be presenting them with the opportunity to get some. Our difficulty is a whole bunch of our folks, unfortunately, have to be in those pesky police uniforms and vests for their own personal safety. What can we do for them as well? So that's one hump that we want to get over. But they do travel, they go to conferences, and so we want them to be, because we know everybody is proud to be a part of this city. So definitely we will look into supplementing those funds. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Not? What's your next item under other?
If the council has any, I defer to that.
Okay. Any what?
If the council has any other, I would want to not, I wouldn't want to be in front of them.
Sonia?
Tom and I had talked about at the Optimist meeting, a couple times the council's walked in the parade for the festival. So wondering if anyone was interested in doing that again this year, if we wanted to make a plan for that. Anybody available?
Already entered my car in the parade again. All right, you'd be right there with me then.
Saturday,
Yeah.
We could provide you with cardboard cutouts.
There were a lot of others in the
It's
last
the
parade.
thing.
There you go. I get met with big yellow truck and put stuff on it.
Well, there's nothing seriously else. I will go ahead and move on.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, not this Saturday night, but the following Saturday night is
It was just the
is
talk
the
afterwards.
20th anniversary of September 11th. I had asked staff to solemnly consider that. Obviously, it's significant. It is not celebration. I asked them originally to consider Flight 93 and Let's Roll. A little bit of difficulty there. Didn't realize that there were some copyrights in place, etc. But we would like to remember that occasion. So what we have preliminary put together is a very simple, what I think is a dignified ceremony, and you will see this publicized this week. We will begin at 7 in the evening on Saturday, September 11th, in the evening. Very few places are actually remembering this. And if they are, they're kind of ceremonies in the morning. But we would like to begin at 7 and have a musical tribute from 7 to 7:30. The mayor has agreed, since he was in the thick of it, to make some comments. We would like to center our ceremony on the sacrifices. We recognize there was a significant and tragic loss of life that day, but we would like to center ours on the sacrifices that were made by the first responders, the police department and the fire departments. And so we have invited South Metro to participate. Mayor making some comments beginning at 7:30, between 7:30 and 7:35, depending on the music. We are hoping for echoing taps beginning at 7:40. The sun sets at 7:45. At 7:45, by national rule, the flag in the front will go up, and we have 2 spotlights that shine 3 miles into the sky. And so we are going to do the Twin Towers from 7:45 at sunset until midnight, and then we will extinguish them in remembrance of that day. And so wanted to give an early invitation to the council. You will be seeing this published up on social media, probably Wednesday, Thursday this week. It's been a little bit difficult. Unfortunately for Ms. Harmer, she was forced into, you have to get, when you're shining lights 3 miles into the sky, you have to get FAA approval. They were honored to give approval to us for that, but we learned more acronyms than I even had in the Marine Corps. So just wanted to alert the council of that. Thank you.
I don't know if I missed where you said that was going to be held at?
We're going to do it out here on the plaza.
Oh, cool.
And again, a kind of a quiet, the public's going to be invited, obviously, but we want it to be as quiet and dignified as we can possibly make it in honor of that occasion.
Now, you said you had 3 lights. Are there going to be 3 of them?
2 lights, sir,
Okay.
for
I
the
know
Twin
you had
Towers.
Twin Towers. This is going to be white, I assume, white or red and blue.
We had hoped for red and blue. Unfortunately, blue does not show up if you shine it up.
Oh, okay.
It becomes invisible. So we're going to go with 2 white lights.
Yeah, just for those of you that are not familiar, so double taps or shadow taps is a moving experience, and it is rare that you will experience it. You can pull it up on YouTube. It's rare to experience. The military does not allow for shadow taps, but it is just what it would sound. It's one trumpet and then the following trumpet following, and it's much like being around in an area, an enclosed area where police bagpipers are playing Amazing Grace. It's incredible. So I've never seen anybody do it here in the area. It's very unique and very moving.